The first people to introduce today is we have Joe from the Australian Passivhaus Association. He's also the head of Blue Ethos Homes, who unfortunately had to cancel their open house this weekend due to another corona outbreak. But he is here with us today to discuss the Australian Passivhaus Association and its work, and perhaps he'll also mention a bit about what he does. So the Australian Passivhaus Association joined EFA back in November 2013. They are the local boots on the ground in Australia, a not-for-profit organisation that promotes the Passivhaus standard there and raise awareness and advocate for its use. They also have a range of training opportunities, which I'm sure Joe will discuss, and they support Passivhaus practitioners and also the general Passivhaus network of both professionals and, of course, enthusiasts alike, and facilitate discussions through the provision of information locally. They have been very involved in our Efficiency First campaign this year, so we'll be touching on that as well. But I will leave the rest to Joe to discuss. Now, what I might do is I might stop sharing the screen for a moment so that we can see Joe's lovely face, and then we will hand over to him to discuss AFA.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, or evening. Joe from Australian Passivhaus Association. So yeah, I'll just be brief as I can. Our membership at the moment is sitting at about 420 Australia-wide, roughly. Got about, I think, 32 certified passive houses at the moment, and then we've got a lot of non-passive, non-certified passive houses. But there's a lot of interest for Passivhaus currently in Australia, even with ourselves. 12 months ago, I was getting inquiries for just wanting sustainable homes. Now we're actually getting a lot of them. Most of our inquiries are now saying that we want to build a passive house, which is great. So we did have about 4 homes in New South Wales on the open house day, but unfortunately all got cancelled. We'll see how all that track goes. We're doing a lot of AFA is doing a lot of training at the moment. We've started a training program for designers and tradespersons, and is getting a fair bit of traction and a lot of interest. We're doing a lot of other short courses. So all's travelling well. You know, we're still in, I suppose, here in Australia, fairly early infancy stage with Passivhaus, but we're getting a fair bit of traction. Yeah, we'll see how we go. So, yeah, we had at our open house, we were going to do a lot. We've been collecting a lot of stats and data of how the passive house has been travelling. So we were going to sort of present most of those to people, which we're going to visit. And I think the other homes we're going to do something similar as well. So yeah, I think that's probably all I've really got to say at the moment. Unless anyone's got any questions that hopefully I'll be able to answer.
We have quite a few questions towards the next section of the presentation. So unless anybody's got anything super on the top of their tip of their tongue, then otherwise we might wait for questions until after we've heard from Amy from New Zealand. So I will just share my screen again so that everyone can get a sense, and I know that Amy has also included some slides for today. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Yep, looks good. So we also have a second affiliate here with us today. We have Amy, the CEO of the Passivhaus Institute New Zealand, or FINZ for short. They also have a Maori name since last year, but I won't try to pronounce that. Perhaps Amy can fill us in a moment on how that is pronounced. The Passivhaus Institute of New Zealand joined EFA back in 2011. Excellent. So, Joe, I will find the questions for you in Slido and I will get back to you in a moment. We have a founding member of EVA because we have most of the affiliates that'll join us in the next 2 days over the different sessions joined us way back in 2011 or 2012. So FINS works with professionals and the public sector in New Zealand, and I'm sure Amy will touch on some of the huge successes they've been having recently, especially in the policy sector. They help improve health and well-being in New Zealand, which, for those of you who are familiar with it, often has a damp or a moldy house issue. So perhaps something to ask about to Amy, how Passivhaus helps tackle that locally. And of course, they also provide a wealth of local materials. They are much like AFA in Australia, our boots on the ground in New Zealand. And they do a really amazing job of bringing Passivhaus standards to the local situation in the North and South Islands of New Zealand. So without further ado, I'll turn off my microphone and hand over to Amy, who does not have control of the presentation, so she'll just tell me when to move to the next PowerPoint slide.
Yeah. Thank you, Georgia. So yes, as Georgia said, I'm the CEO of Te Tapatanga o Te Wharekaro o Aotearoa, and that translates as the Houses of Vitality in New Zealand. Next slide, please, Georgia. So I had a bit more notice than Joe to actually prep some slides, but those of you that were at the Hui might notice a bit of recycling has happened, so apologies for that. Yeah, just things are going up and up in New Zealand. We've got 38 certified passive houses and 6 low energy buildings, but there's also on the horizon probably an additional 50 dwellings to be certified by the end of the year. We've also gone up from 187 to 157 members in the last year. And speaking to Paul at AFA, probably about 15 to 18 months ago, AFA was at 150 or so, and they're now at 420. So, you know, if we go along the same path, we'll be expecting some big growth. So next slide, please, Georgia. So the next slide, when it comes up, is just a photo of the latest, as far as I know, certified passive house building in New Zealand. It's called a Wheelhouse, and it's in Whitby, and Elrond was the designer on that. Next slide, please, Georgia, is just a photo of the co-housing in Dunedin. So that's completed, and certification is imminent. So those are, I think, 22 that are 22 of those dwellings that are seeking certification. And then on the next slide, we've got Luggett Hall, which is poised to be New Zealand's first community passive house building. So construction commencing in July, hoping to be finished around about April next year. So I don't know how ambitious that is. So just a really quick run through, we've got 7 houses in our buildings in our open days, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I think some of them already started today, so COVID shouldn't interfere. So the first one, Georgia, on the next slide is the Fairfield office in Blenheim, which is only 55 meters squared, and they're using Formant SIP panels and Climber PVC windows. And next slide, please. There's just photos of the construction, and the next slide is also just photos of the completed. I think this is the completed building. Yep. So that's what it looks like at the moment. The next one that we've got in our open days on the next slide is Woodlow Rise in Christchurch. That's designed by Thika Architecture and constructed by Third Little Peak. They're aiming for PH Classic. Next slide is Threepwood House in Queenstown, winner of the NZIA 2021 Southern Awards Small Project Architecture category, and this is a family home and an architecture studio. And next slide, this is Lower Saddle Passive House, and this is designed by Joseph Lythe. He's been in the media quite a bit, and and he's really advocating for how Passive House can be built on a tight budget. So there's a lot of articles and information that he's written if you want to check that out. Okay, next slide, please. This is Piha House in Piha in West Auckland, and this is a retrofit. They're aiming for an NFIT renovation. It's a 2-story, 4-bedroom, 345 square metre house. And next slide. And this is the legacy project. So the previous one in Piha and this one are both Sang architects. And this is thinking about multi-generational living. It's called the legacy project. And 3 sets of clients made up of parents and the families. So, and then next slide, please, is the Burrow Passive House. So this is one that I'm going to be visiting over the weekend. I'm keen to see. It's a 660 square metre, 3-story home, and that's consultant is via architecture and constructed by Craft Homes. And so those are the 7 in the open days, but just wanted to highlight a couple of projects that are more bringing Passive House at scale. This is the site of Belbird Developments, and that's well, Belbird Developments is the organisation, and the project is called Greenwood Lane, and they are giving cash incentives if people design and get certified Passive House or low energy, and they're also contributing money towards the initial design in the Passive House planning package, and also to go through the certification process. So they're really helping to push forward Passive House in New Zealand. And then Bushland Park, which is the next slide, is aiming to be Australia's first Passive House subdivision. There's a husband and wife farmers, and they decided to sell off part of their farm, and they reached out to Ethos Homes to basically say that they wanted to create this subdivision, and Ethos Homes in turn have engaged Karen from Meta Architects, who's designed 4 different types of houses. So they're all standalone with carports and solar panels and electric vehicle chargers, and so those are just about to start construction and going out for sale on a sort of iterative basis. And just on the next slide is a render of what one of those houses will look like. Okay, nearly done, guys. And just a few things that Fins has released recently. So this is our refresh brochure. It's actually flying off the shelves. This is aimed at potential home owners or home builders, and just gives a lot of detail about what is Passive House, what's the process you need to go through, why you should build Passive House. So there's a link to that on our website, and there's also hard copies available. We've sent them out to the different projects for the open homes. And on the next slide is the High Performance Construction Details Handbook. Again, there's a link to our website, and so this is something that Elron and Jason have been working really hard on with brands, and basically details a number of high performance construction details that have been consented in New Zealand. We've had a huge amount of interest on our website of people downloading it, and yeah, so as I say, it's aimed at architects, builders, and consenting officers, and that's been generated a huge amount of interest. And just also wanted to mention, this is the next slide is Passive House Primer, which is actually, it's not a Fins initiative, it's Jason from Sustainable Engineering, but it's just we just wanted to highlight it as a useful resource. And this is really aimed at people who want to build a passive house but don't really know where to start, or if you're an architect who has a client that comes and says I want you to build or design a passive house, then you can refer back to this. So it is a useful resource for our members. Obviously, if other members produce something similar, we would also promote those as well. So just wanted to highlight that. And I think this is the second last or the last slide. We have got the South Pacific Passive House Conference coming up in November. This is co-hosted with AFA, and the call for papers is out at the moment and due by next Wednesday. So if you've got any projects that or if you've got any papers that you're looking to present at the conference in November, we'd welcome your abstracts. Thanks very much.
And thank you, Amy. Definitely some very interesting projects happening and a lot of open houses, which is always great to see.
Yeah, we are relieved that COVID hasn't scuppered us on this side of the Tasman. Yeah.
No, it's definitely a good thing. And for those of you who aren't aware, so Amy mentioned Jason. I assume you're speaking about Jason Quinn, who is also one of the local Passivhaus certifiers.
He is, and when I talked about the primer, so Jason works for Sustainable Engineering, and he's one of the 3 active certifiers in New Zealand at the moment.
That's a very good point, actually. Joe, I saw that the Australian Passivhaus Association has a new building certifier. Do you want to mention that?
Okay, so that's the building in Asquith, which is our AFCA's chairperson's home. It was only recently opened, and he's been in it a fair few weeks and very happy with it at the moment. So is that the building you're referring to?
I was referring, dropping the phone, which I'm trying to find out the questions. I see Slido is popular. I was referring to your new building certifier, Marcus Strang, who joins Claire Perry, and it is escaping my mind. Who is your third building certifier in Australia?
Oh, sorry, you're talking about, building certifier, not building, sorry. Third, so we've got Luke. So we've got Luke, Marcus, Claire. They're the ones that I know of, so my apologies, but yeah, is there any?
No worries. I put a slide up that said new buildings, which was confusing, but yeah, so Luke Plowman, Claire Perry and Marcus Stang are the building certifiers in Australia. And in New Zealand, Amy?
Jason Quinn, Sarah Waring and Toby Elron. You might, if you can help me out. Toby, I can't remember his surname off the top of my head, but he also works. So all 3 of them work for Sustainable Engineering.
Wonderful. So if you are in New Zealand or Australia and you're looking at a project, then you know that you have plenty of local certifiers available to help out. So we've had quite a few questions actually, so I will just touch on those before we go to our different topics. So we have a question for Joe. Will you be putting any information online for the open days instead of in person due to them being postponed due to COVID?
Yes, we will, but which platform, we just need to work out which platform to actually load it up to.
It was all very spontaneous now. I saw New South Wales shut down this week, so you know, it's all been a bit of a surprise for everybody, I think.
Yep. So what platform would you like me to load the info up to?
We'll wait for some comments. I mean, your website's always a good one. If people would like to do, you know, digital tours, so take a video tour of their place, they're always welcome to the International Passivhaus Open Day video tour list, which we update every Passivhaus Open Days, and there's quite a few new ones. So if you are looking to take a digital tour, definitely check out our list on YouTube. But I think you can let us know and we can spread the news through the EFA newsletter and of course social media. Another question about Australia. So what is the variety of Passivhaus buildings in Australia?
So at present that I know of, we've got a community hub in Victoria being built. We've got numerous smaller homes being built, and currently we've got ourselves a 480 square metre, over 3 stories, fully accessible Passivhaus build going at the moment. We are hoping to maybe go to Passivhaus Premium, but I think that will depend on the budget.
Excellent. And is that in the Blue Mountains or?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yep. So yeah,
Oh,
we actually had an open construction site tour only a week ago. So that went well and attended well. So yeah, it's still under construction.
that's exciting. And as one of the Australian buildings was shortlisted and I think also took out a few awards, was it the Monash University Gillies Hall?
Yes, correct. Yep. Yep. So that was well done. Yeah, and we had a fair few local awards as well with the Sapphire last year, so 2019. Yep. So all the
There's been
awards
a lot
are.
of awards
Yeah.
for AFA lately. Claire Parry has also been Claire Parry and also Talina Edwards, your new
Yes,
advocacy.
Selena, correct. Yep, that was great. That was the sustainability awards, I'm pretty sure.
So lots of exciting things happening in Australia then. We have
Yeah,
another question. For New Zealand, is the 55 square metre office a granny flat? I assume, is it a backyard office?
It's a home office.
Excellent. Well, that was a quick and easy answer.
So I'm going to see if I can say anything else, but yes, it's a home office. Yeah.
Excellent. I think might be a lot of interest in those going forward if everybody's doing home office to maybe separate home and work. A question potentially for me. In Germany, what type of building did the interest in Passivhaus start with, and how did this change over time to gain scale? That's a really interesting question, actually. It wasn't necessarily a straightforward path. This year, as you may know, Passivhaus is celebrating 30 years since the first official Passivhaus built, which was a terrace building, a terrace row home, depending on which term you use. So multiple then living units, 3 or 4 houses, I think Jess can correct me. So that was the first one, but it was based off a lot of research on different passive style approaches, including a passive style ship, the Saskatchewan house in Canada, and a range of other best practices from around the world, from China, from different countries in Europe, and so forth. And so the collective knowledge gained from those different projects, we call them Passivhaus pioneers, was then used to inform the final and first Passivhaus project. And from there, it really just, it took time to gain scale, of course, because you need to create capacity or build capacity. You need to inform your audience, and of course, new building styles or new approaches, they take time to gain traction. But a good example is that IFA was founded in 2010. The Passivhaus Institute was founded in 1996. And by 2010, the international community had grown so large and significant that it was seen as important to found the International Passivhaus Association to promote Passivhaus worldwide and also help that growing international community. So I hope that answers the question. I can, of course, send some links. Jessica, I see, has included a historical review, and everybody always likes the Passivhaus ship story. So do check that out. All right, I think we have covered the first round of questions. So I will go back over to the speakers. Are there any other new buildings underway or potentially exciting projects that we're hoping come to fruition that you can tell us about? Amy, maybe in New Zealand?
Yeah, there's definitely, I can't really talk too much about it, but there's definitely some apartment buildings that are looking at Passivhaus, which will be, I know of at least a couple in Auckland, around 40 units each, and then I know there's at least one in Wellington as well. We're also having discussions, again, we can't really say anything at this stage, but we are having discussions with Kāinga Ora, which is housing in New Zealand, as to whether, you know, it might be a possibility for them to design passive house buildings.
That's wonderful. Does Kāinga Ora do social housing, or is it
social housing and some other housing, but primarily social housing, and they are the biggest, I guess, the biggest developer in New Zealand. So if they were to start looking at passive house, that would be obviously a huge boost for New Zealand.
That is wonderful. Well, hoping that works out. I know there's been a lot of growth in the UK recently, especially in Scotland, where a lot of their housing associations have gone passive because of the benefits in reducing fuel poverty and, of course, longevity and low running costs. Over to Australia, Joe, are there any other projects? You mentioned one new building, but are there any other things in the pipeline that might be of interest to the audience?
Yeah, there are a fair few. Well, like Amy, a lot of it's a little bit, I suppose, secretive and can't say much, but there's some co-housing developments that we've been talking to, and we're sort of, at the moment, we're sort of talking to a lot of government departments, a lot of councils, all that, trying to promote passive house and just gain interest from higher above. So yeah, sort of, I suppose, trying to up the standards.
Mm-hmm. And also in New Zealand, actually, there's potentially a retirement housing in Dunedin as well.
Ah, that's excellent. All right. Yes, there are quite a few examples of retirement homes and care homes throughout Europe, but I'm not aware of any in the South Pacific yet. So great to hear about that new development. Having a look then over to components, are there any Australian-made or New Zealand-made components you can tell us about? New or old?
Well, one of the suppliers here has recently announced their intention to be able to deliver appropriately thermally broken aluminium windows, which would be a first for New Zealand.
Yeah, in Australia, I sort of don't know too many products that are Australian. Again, it's sort of passive house is relatively new, so most of our stuff is imported.
And where do you mostly import from for Australian, New Zealand projects?
So we also have a company called Thermadura that does certified windows in New Zealand. A lot of the components would tend to come from Germany or Europe.
And there's also, obviously not quite South Pacific, but there's quite a large amount of components from certified components based in China, which might be a slightly shorter import or travel path.
Whether we're a big enough market for China to bother with, don't know.
We're about the same. So a lot of our stuff's from Germany, Poland, Europe. There's stuff from New Zealand, and we're getting a lot of stuff from China. But at the moment we're having a few dramas. But our lead times are stretching out a bit just due to, I think, COVID and world hunger for building at the moment. So a lot of our material, we've got a bit of a material shortage, full stop, here in Australia. So.
Yes, definitely. I think that's globally, and obviously canal stoppages don't help that. But that's something to be aware of that is affecting the construction industry overall is material shortage. I see that Jess has added the component database where you can all find various components based on where they are manufactured as well as where they are available, because as both of our affiliates have mentioned, a lot of components may be made in Europe or in China or in North America, but they are made available worldwide. So you can find out through that database where you can actually get components from. And hopefully the lead times aren't too long.
Yeah, and I know with at least one supplier, although the component was made in New Zealand, the components of the component were imported. So, you know, that we still had those delays affected, even though it was a New Zealand made product. And I suppose, you know, if the market is starting to signal more scale of Passivhaus, then you know, that can only be good for component suppliers to have that confidence that if they create and supply a product, there'll be a market for it.
For sure. And there's definitely been a lot of growth. We have a really lovely graphic, which I have not included here, but you can find it on our website, showing the growth of components, certified Passivhaus components around the world. And we regularly post about any new components to social media and EFA newsletters. And there's, of course, the twice annual or quarterly EFA component newsletter, letting you know about all of the new components. So if you are in the market for any of those, do check those out, or you can of course always contact the Passivhaus Institute's component department, or your local affiliate, who of course know obviously the Passivhaus market locally best, and where to look for different building materials. So there's been a lot of updates from both sides of the pond in New Zealand and in Australia on training opportunities. Maybe to Australia first, do you want to tell us about the general training opportunities and any particular courses or masterclasses maybe? I saw something about that online this morning that are happening down under.
Yeah, so we've sort of targeted our a lot of training at the moment because there is a bit of a hunger for Passivhaus and people gaining knowledge. So AFA are actually running or just started designer courses and tradespersons courses, but we're also doing a few short courses and some master classes. We've got a few other training providers around Australia that are also doing the same. So we've got a lot of people sort of providing training, and it seems to be there's a good uptake at the moment, which is great.
Excellent. And do you want to name a couple of the local training facilities that are available in Australia? Box Hill Institute, one down in Melbourne.
Yeah, Box Hill, and then there's Daniel Crest, which he trades under Plus Energy, Plus Energy something. Sorry, but Daniel Crest is a good trainer. It's a great trainer.
Excellent. I'm sure Jessica will pop in the link about local training providers. Smart Plus Academy. Elron, thank you for jumping in.
Thank you very much. So actually, my training was with Box Hill, and part of it was with Daniel. So it was really good.
Wonderful. For those of you who aren't familiar, Elrond is the chairperson of the Passivhaus Institute New Zealand. Speaking of New Zealand, over to you, Amy. Do you want to talk about the Passivhaus? Is it called the Passivhaus Academy in New Zealand?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. The Passivhaus Academy is facilitating an event which is actually presented by Finns on Tuesday, and that's Marketing Passivhaus. So we've got John Opperman from the Earth Day Initiative, and then a real estate broker, one from New Zealand, Shelley Cresswell, and one from Australia, Rory Martin. So that's an online 2-hour session on Tuesday. It's 11 a.m. New Zealand time. Obviously, anyone's welcome to sign up to that. We had the CEPH1 online course actually started yesterday, and we have got, I think it's about 8 people from Kaingaora, from the Housing New Zealand, who have joined on that. So they're obviously interested in learning more about Passivhaus. So it's good news. We've got a design PH course for designers and consultants starting in August, also online. tradesperson's course in October, which is in person, and another designer consultant course in November, which will be online. So that's what's coming up.
And there's been quite a lot of growth in New Zealand as well, with people looking to further their professional careers. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what Fins and Fans are working on, is how we can scale up the training here in New Zealand, because there's an increasing demand.
And that's always wonderful to hear. And are there any available exams to take this year for anyone who is looking to certify as a passive house designer or tradesperson?
Yes, so we actually had yesterday we had the exam, and 2 government officials completed that on the building code team, so that's good news. So and then also with the tradesperson's course in October, I believe the exam will be available to take at the end of that course, and similarly with the designer course in November, the exam will be available.
Excellent. So for those of you looking into furthering your professional qualifications, do check out your local affiliate's website to find out about local training opportunities and, of course, course and exam dates. So I've got 2 more slides on different topics, but then we will have a quiz. So I hope you've all been listening. So let's jump into the Efficiency First campaign. Just as a quick introduction, although I'm sure you've all seen it, and of course you may have recognized the background of this PowerPoint as being part of the Efficiency First campaign. So this is a joint effort from all of the EFA affiliates worldwide, and we are working to promote an efficiency first approach to building design and, of course, retrofitting projects, to make sure that we are ensuring a good foundation for, of course, sustainable and long-lived projects. So there's been a range of different materials made available through this project, and there are lots more campaign activities planned, but perhaps Australia. So Joe, you can tell us about what has been implemented locally there, perhaps the video or the pamphlet.
Yeah, so we've had Kate and Talina working on that for a while, and at the moment it's just getting the word out here in Australia, so we're just trying to get as much information to people as possible, and hopefully people will pick up, and the more we talk about Passive House, the better it is, and the efficiency.
Wonderful. And if you're interested in listening to the Aussie video or checking out the local pamphlet, you can find it on the AFA website, or of course also on the EFA website. So the flyer has been made available in a localized version explaining the local affiliates' work and contact details, and then of course a little bit about the Efficiency First campaign and the Passive House standard. Then over to New Zealand. Amy, anything else to add about the Efficiency First campaign? Any impacts to mention?
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking to tag the Efficiency First hashtag in our posts, and I suppose also just trying to bring it to a wider audience. So if I was at an event in March, and you know, the discussion was actually about a Green Star supermarket. But you know, I was able to bring that in and say, you know, I think it's a no-brainer that you look at efficiency first. And the example that they gave was around having doors on the milk fridge, but you know, just something like that, so you're not constantly pumping out energy to actually keep the milk cold. But you know, trying to just relate it back to hashtag efficiency first. And we've had a number of downloads of the brochure of our website. I can't remember the exact numbers, somewhere between 40 and 80 off the top of my head. I can't remember the number, but yeah, we have had some interest from the news stories and the information that we've put on our site.
Wonderful. And yes, as you mentioned, and you can see it here, the hashtag, if you're looking to find out more about the campaign across social media, is Efficiency Fast. And the campaign's actual slogan is Efficiency, the first renewable energy. All right then, and I have one more question, which would be a general question. So for those who aren't already engaged with their local affiliate or Passivhaus community, do you have any suggestions on how or where or when they could get involved? Perhaps New Zealand first.
How someone could engage with the local Passivhaus. Okay. Well, I mean, for a start, they could come to one or more of the projects over the open days. That would probably be a good place to start. We have our Facebook and our LinkedIn pages that quite active at the moment. Not having any other bright inspiration at the moment. What about Joe?
Sorry. Yeah, it's engaging with I suppose your local, like for Australia is the APA. A lot of local builders and all that too are having open days, yeah, just I suppose APA's the first source of, I suppose, contact. So we get a fair few sort of people coming in through APA, yeah, we sort of help out. We have our display home, which sort of gets a fair bit of traction, and people are actually staying in it. So we've had a fair few architects and all staying in it. So it's just getting the word out. But APA is our first choice, and ends would be New Zealand. So we'll take it.
Yeah, and I suppose the events. So we had our annual Hui in Wellington a few weeks ago, and that was the most popular one to date. And then we've got the conference coming up, so that should generate some interest within the community and from the general public as well.
And I think one of the words, I don't know if I saw it before in the word cloud, but to describe the Passivhaus community would be very friendly. So we don't bite, and if you are interested in joining the local Passivhaus affiliate or finding out more about Passivhaus and chatting to some of the members, then definitely, as both of our speakers have spoken about, do go to a local event. Get in touch online through their info addresses to find out about opportunities. And of course, if you are interested in building a Passivhaus locally, they'll be able to direct you to some professionals who'll be able to help with that project. So, time for a quiz, I think, unless either of our speakers have anything else that they wanted to mention.
Just mention as well that the New Zealand government's just published a low carbon procurement guide, and that actually has mention of Passivhaus and also of Passivhaus planning package and also pH ribbon. So that's pretty positive.
That's fantastic. So we see also the local Passivhaus communities engaging with policy makers and decision makers, and that's a very important component of
yeah.
Excellent. All right then. So if everybody's got their phones ready, we can start on the next section. We can join the quiz. You can add your name. Oh, there's two Georges apparently. That's fine.
That might be useful.
All right, then. What are EFA affiliates? Independent member-driven Passivhaus organisations, Passivhaus trade associations, or official local headquarters of the Passivhaus Institute. All right, next question. We see mostly correct. So EFA affiliates are independent organizations. They are unbiased member associations, our feet on the ground boots on the ground who help drive passive house development and growth locally, but they are ultimately independent and they affiliate with EFA as partners of our network. How many EFA affiliates are there currently? $12, $22, or $32? Okay. I see some mixed reactions. Indeed, it is 22, and we have another affiliate organization in the pipeline. It's in South America. So do join us for our North and South America session tomorrow to find out a bit more about that. What is the name of the 2021 EFA affiliate campaign? Passivhaus, the key to better buildings. Passivhaus for all. Efficiency, the first renewable energy. Okay. Excellent. So, efficiency, the first renewable energy. Passivhaus for all was the motto of the North American Passive House Network's 2021 conference, and Passivhaus, the key to better buildings, is the motto for the 25th annual International Passive House Conference, which is happening this September, and it will be online and also in person in Wuppertal, Germany, if you're interested in taking part. When was EFA founded? (2010, 1996, or 2008? Excellent. All right, very mixed bag here. So, as I mentioned before, we were founded in 2010 to help unite the growing international passive house community. And one final quiz question. What is a benefit of joining your local affiliate association? Do you get a 2-for-1 membership to your local association and EFA? You stay up to date on local passive house developments? Can you meet local like-minded passive house professionals and enthusiasts, or is it all of the above? Excellent. I see 8 answers have come through. So 9. All right, then. Correct, all of the above. By joining your local affiliate, you will be a member both of EFA and of course the local association at the same price as just the local association's fees. They will of course keep you up to date on local passive house developments, and you'll also receive information from EFA to find out about global updates. You can meet local like-minded passive house professionals and enthusiasts through the many events and other opportunities created by your local association and of course EFA, and thus the answer is all of the above. So, Carl beat me. Excellent. That's always a good thing. Carl, if for those of you who aren't familiar, is my colleague at EFA. So I see though that everybody did pretty well. So final question is just, are you a member of your local EFA affiliate? Yes, know or not yet, but planning on joining? All right, well, always good to see some potential growth. Do definitely have a look at what your local affiliate is up to. There's a really great wealth of opportunities to meet people locally, which is always good after a very lengthy pandemic, but also to learn more and to find out about Passivhaus projects and developments happening in your region. So a big thank you to everybody for joining us today. I don't know if there's any final words from either of our speakers, Joe or Amy, but first of all, a very big thank you to both of you for joining us. Perhaps you two can conclude best with something positive about your local association. Amy?
Yeah, just really great to see the growth of interest and all the people that want to help promote Passivhaus in New Zealand.
It's really wonderful to see. And Joe, something about AFA that you want to conclude with?
All I'd say is that it's a great growing community, and there is a lot of interest. So yeah, hopefully we'll keep on keeping on. And yeah, thank you all.
Thank you all for joining us. We have a few other sessions on this weekend, so you can join to find out about Europe and our European affiliates tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. European time, but you can find your local times in the event information. And we have a session with our North and South American affiliates tomorrow evening European time, which will be early morning for Australia and possibly in the middle of the night for New Zealand. But of course, we will record all of these sessions, so you can definitely find them on YouTube. Thank you to Amy and to Joe, and to everybody. Have a wonderful mid-year International Passivhaus Open Day weekend, and all the best to all of you.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you all. Have a great day.